the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Lawyer Paul Admochire, the exclusive analysis about the new patriotic party, the candidate in the person of Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia, and Yewura, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, na exclusively wachiri chirimudi intia esefata say Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia obehwe John Mahama say basa na ohwe analysis a oyeye from J. Ekufuor de so de ba na ochiri chirima na ohwe survey abanyina automatically obia who say the new patriotic party is leading and they are ahead because so the campaign Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia eya no grassroots na John Dramani Mahama only policy only plan only bibia they are just moving out na and some more can the preface say omo de yempeni honhom na ewuo na His Excellency the Vice President Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia market and owura one-on-one owura baby pia na ohwe the policies and program and name as a vice president now they compare John Dramani Mahama so vice president na lawyer Paul Emma adeni is simple Emma every voter say utie sadwea the likelihood say obetoma the new patriotic party high of which announcing idea say Mahama the comeback only at the pepebia because Mahama as a vice president puto Mahama as a president puto now the second coming of Mahama be more dangerous and suicidal it's here for poor Admochire and you got in similar church come on say His Excellency Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia were the most preferred candidate than John Dramani Mahama yanko ngoti emresia
voting. The first round of voting, Kufuor had already beaten Professor Mills. That was significant. This is JJ's party, the indefatigable and most phenomenal and formidable political force was now completely dissipated by the Ghanaian voter stamp from 56 to 44. Now this is because the MPP started with pushing the party agenda, which was already working, but then the mistakes of Professor Mills played into the hands of the MPP and they began to push the John Kufuor agenda. So by the time voting was coming, everybody knew that the gentle giant was going to be the new president of Ghana. That's how it was fought. I'm coming up to show why this is important and what it means, okay? All right, so let's move to the next election. The next election that we select for this purpose is 2008. The very, very eventful 2008 election. For me, it's one of the most competitive. It's not for me, it's the record shows that is the most competitive election that went into 3 rounds when the constitution has provided only 2 rounds. Will suggest that it was very competitive, wasn't it? Okay, so in this election, John Kufuor had finished his tenure as president and the MPP had gone through an acrimonious and rancorous Congress and had elected Nana Akufo-Addo, who had a dominant political name, not just because he was inheriting a name from his father who was a ceremonial president, but especially Chief Justice. And Akufo-Addo's father, even though he was a ceremonial president in the Second Republic, had done more in the judicial system, in jurisprudence, than in politics. And so whilst he was ceremonial president, he was better known by the Association of Lawyers, the Ghana Bar Association, judges and co, because he had done significant jurisprudential work that got him to become the Lord Chief Justice before he became the ceremonial president of Ghana. But Akufo-Addo's image had been built on human rights law and pure politics. In that sense, he had developed a huge political image, not so much of a legal image like his father, but his legal was also connected to the politics because his legal was thought to be a human rights lawyer, which is also thought to be political advocacy. Okay, so here was Akufo-Addo, the dominant name in the country. And Professor Mills had been contesting the elections. He had lost in 2000, he had lost in 2004, and he had managed to generate an image for himself, that which he desperately needed in the year 2000, the image of a peacemaker, Asumdwehene, as they called him. So Mills had by now acquired that image. That he's a peacemaker. He doesn't shout on people. He's not going to be abrasive. He's not going to be all of that. The NDC were also struggling in the election to push the agenda of party versus party, because at that time the economic conditions were fairly good, except one or two issues. The economic conditions were fairly good. Kufuor's administration had issued so many firsts. National health insurance had come to Ghana, public transport had been fixed, capitation grant, the F-Cube had been launched. So Kufuor's government had a lot to say. And anyone inheriting Kufuor's government had a lot to say. Plenty was going to be said. Ghana had discovered oil, and all of that was there for Kufuor's government. The MDC were struggling to find a way to push the party agenda that could fail. In the alternative, they decided to push the personality agenda. To do so, they needed to push Professor Mills's personality as the kingmaker and create the impression that Akufo-Addo was, as a peacemaker, and create the impression that Akufo-Addo was rancorous, he was abrasive, he was that image which Ghanaians had rejected in 2000 of Rawlings and his party. They were trying hard to now dump the image on Akufo-Addo. In doing so, they went overboard to the extent, as we now know, that Fifi Kwete and co went to Parliament to apologize and withdraw their words for the things they said about Akufo-Addo. They said he's a drug dealer, he does this, he's a that. Now, they needed to do that, because if you don't dent Akufo-Addo's image, this is a straight victory for the MPP. No issues about it. It is a breaking the eighth they were looking for. It's a third term they were looking for, which is difficult all over the world. But the party image and the colossal image of Akufo-Addo was going to just take the MPP to victory. The other problem that the NDC didn't create but benefited, inured to their benefit, was the divisions within the MPP. The election of Akufo-Addo among several 20-something, 17 candidates had dented the unity of the MPP. And when I interviewed John Kufuor, he told me that I've played it here so many times. So that also was working in the backyard of the MPP. So the MPP's kitchen was boiling in ways that they didn't like. And outside in the public image, they were showing great unity, but they had at least 19 candidates running as independents in some of the strongholds of the MPP. That was going to work in favor of the NDC. But this is how election 2008 was fought. So Nana Akufo-Addo versus Mills Akufo-Addo, the NDC tried to damage Akufo-Addo's image because the party versus party, they were not winning it. And then the personality too, if they are not careful, they won't win it. What happened? At the end of the first round, Professor Mills had come second. He had been defeated by Akufo-Addo in the first round, 47.92. Akufo-Addo had 49.13, needing 25,000 votes to clinch the victory. But this is the thing. The MPP, the NDC had won in Parliament. They had overtaken the MPP in Parliament. That, I think, was the biggest Waterloo to Akufo-Addo's quest to be president in 2008. Not so much the results of the first round, but the fact that the NDC had beaten the MPP in Parliament, and therefore the NDC had more parliamentary candidates, or more parliamentary MPs, elected parliamentary candidates than the MPP had. So that created an easy campaign for the NDC in the second round. And that was a campaign that Ghanaians can understand. We've won the parliament. Why are you not going to give us the presidency? The excitement also that some Ghanaians have, and generally some people around the world have, the excitement of removing the old system and placing a new one, that creates a frenzy a little bit, just with the expectation of what is going to happen, who are going to be the new ministers, and that expectation also got some of the youth to help Professor Mills to win. But even in all that, 47.92, he was still behind Akufo-Addo. That shows the power of the MPP image and also the dominant nature of the flag bearer. Looking for a third term and defeating the candidates who had run two elections already. This is what happened. In the second round, and you remember Kufuor's second round. In Kufuor's second round, he came up with 56% straight away. Now in the second round, Professor Mills came up with 50.23%. Akufo-Addo came up with 49.77. So you see that Akufo-Addo improved in the second round, but was not enough to take out Mills. And Mills had such a significant windfall to be able to win. And let's check out what happened in Parliament here. And we already know that what happened in Parliament was that the MPP had been defeated in Parliament, and therefore the second round was easy for Professor Mills. But if you check the results out there, you will see that this was a campaign that was lost by the MPP, not so much that it was won by the NDC. But of course, victory is for the NDC. Let's move on and see what happens in the next one, 2016. So in 2012, there was an election. Little to say about that. The election petition makes 2012's election very difficult to decide to analyze on the basis of who won and all that, because the votes that were attributed to people is all still in doubt. Whether Akufo-Addo got what they said he got, whether President Mahama got what they said he got. The election petition cast all of that in doubt. Not just that, the final day of the election petition, the announcement that came, all of those things shrouded election 2012 in complete doubt. And so we are not able to discuss that in some detail. Let's go, however, to 2016, the one that is undisputed and everybody accept the results. By 2016, the NPP were very confident to push the agenda of the party. Party to party, NPP said, look at them. They have done 8 years. You've seen them. You saw our 8 years. It is better than their 8 years. And it was very obvious, flatly obvious. Doomsor had come. Ghanaians had experienced Doomsor under Kufuor. No doubt about that. That's true. Ghanaians experienced Doomsor under Kufuor, but the John Mahama Doomsor was so debilitating and very painful that people could not even compare. So the NPP came out in a campaign, brutal campaign, aided by civil society, because it was true that take these guys out. You've seen their 8 years. It doesn't matter. On top of that, the NPP pushed the Akufo-Addo agenda that look at our candidate, look at his political record. Everything they said about him was untrue. Today we know that everything they said about Akufo-Addo was untrue. And they pushed that agenda. So the NPP were winning on party versus party and were winning on candidate versus candidate. John Mahama's credibility was at an all-time low in 2016. Akufo-Addo's credibility was an all-time high. And this is the man who is a seasoned politician, and if his credibility is high as well, that is humongous. It is for that reason that you saw these results. First round, and this is the biggest result. I don't know whether we'll see that again in this Fourth Republic. The biggest result of a candidate coming from opposition to completely sweep the government off their feet. First round, Akufo-Addo is getting 53.72, nearly 54%. John Dramani Mahama is getting 44.53%. And John Dramani Mahama is coming from 2012's election that gave him 50 point something. And so he's lost at least 6 percentage points. The vote count, John Mahama gets 4.7 million, Akufo-Addo gets 5.7 million. A whooping 1 million difference in the votes. By the time the Electoral Commissioner was announcing it, 27 constituencies had not been declared. Charlotte Osei told the audience that it wouldn't matter. If you add all the 27 in terms of registered voters, if they all turn up to vote, give everything to John Mahama, he will still not be able to assail the lead that Akufo-Addo has taken of 1 million. That was significant. As far as I'm concerned, the most significant election in the history of the Fourth Republic. So that is a reason, because MPP were winning party versus party and were also winning personality candidate versus candidate. And that swept through the parliamentary elections. I guess that when you are winning both two levels, the main two levels, party versus party, and you're also winning candidates to candidates, you are going to sweep the parliamentary elections. A few parliamentary seats were lost to MPP though, but they came up with a whooping 169 votes, seats out of 257. So that was the analysis of 16. Okay, let's go to 2020, the recent one. It's a big one. So what was 2020 about? By 2020, the Akufo-Addo regime had done 4 years, and they had been able to produce the free SHS. Okay, John Mahama had also just come had returned to the campaign and was running for president. He's the old president. So the 2020 contest was a repetition between John Mahama and Akufo-Addo. So the MPP needed to make a decision. Do they push party versus party and push presidential candidate versus presidential candidate? If you remember the first interview that Akufo-Addo did, the first interview that he talked about the election after COVID, or after COVID limitations had gone down. He was speaking to his PR communicators led by Mustafa Hamid. He was speaking to them, and they allowed the publish that for people to see. And he told them that as far as he's concerned, this election is a contest between John Mahama's 4 years that people have seen and his 4 years that people have seen. So Akufo-Addo, in that first interview for the election, immediately placed the election as a personality contest. It is me versus John Mahama. He has been president before, I have been president before. He's been president 4 years, I've been president 4 years. See what I've done, see what he's done, make a choice. So immediately the campaign started. MPP didn't do MPP versus NDC. They pitched Akufo-Addo against John Mahama. Now, maybe that was complicated because as a result of that, the NPP allowed its parliamentary candidate to fight for their own. Because if you place the contest as party versus party, then it's covering the presidential candidate and it's covering the parliamentary candidate. But if the contest is set out as presidential candidate versus presidential candidate, then you are telling the individual MPs that they are on their own. And because the selection of candidate had been very rancorous in the NPP in the year 2000, because between 16 and 2000 they couldn't really manage it, people thought that some candidates had become unpopular, the center of the party imposed candidates, all of those things, the parliamentary situation at the NPP level was murky. But at the presidential level, Ghanaians seem to have bought into the idea that truly Akufo-Addo's 4 years was better than John Mahama's 4 years. As a matter of public record, you can check it, because the Dumsor alone will kill John Mahama's 4 years. If you compare Dumsor here and the introduction of free SHS here, for the majority of people who were benefiting, by the time the election came, about 800 presidency, there's nothing to look at. But look at his vice president work and compare to Vice President Bawumia, and know that if Bawumia becomes president, he can do more for you. This is the argument that MPP are making. And then please take the book for me, Michael, the book that just last week, a book has been launched in Accra. Yeah, let me take it. Thank you. In Accra, called Dr. Bawumia and the Modern Vice Presidency. It's by Dr. H.S. Ikanku, PhD. And he's talking about how Bawumia's vice presidency has been significant. He quotes in this book also Father Campbell of the Catholic Church, who had also said that Dr. Bawumia's vice president has been unique. So what the NPP is pushing in this campaign is Dr. Bawumia here is far more competent than John Dramani Mahama here. So whilst the country finds itself in economic difficulty, it is still better to leave the country in the hands of one who is competent to resolve economic difficulties, because Dr. Bawumia has shown that he is able to do it. John Mahama, on the other hand, they say has shown that whilst there is no economic difficulty, he drives Ghana into doom. So Dr. Bawumia has shown that between 2017 and 2020, before COVID, when there was no economic difficulty, single-digit inflation, the dollar was stable, all the economic indications were correct when Dr. Bawumia was vice president in the first term of Akufo-Addo's government. In the second term of Akufo-Addo's government, things have become difficult, and yet he's trying. So if you are looking for somebody to steer the ship in 2025, where the global economy will just be recovering, it is Dr. Bawumia that you need to trust, not John Dramani Mahama, because we know him already. That's the campaign that the NPP is pushing. Will the campaign succeed or it won't succeed? I don't know. So why I'm showing you this, especially to our younger viewers and younger journalists, why I'm showing you this analysis is that then says, okay, can you give me back the graphic, please? Yes. When the graphic says Dr. Bawumia is preferred candidate, that is what it means. It means that the NPP campaign that look at Dr. Bawumia, look at his history, look at his role as vice president, and determine whether John Mahama's vice president is anything compared to Dr. Bawumia's vice president. If Dr. Bawumia can do this as vice president, well, see what he can do as president. What is the NDC's response? It's a clever response. They are saying that, forget about what they are saying. They've put Ghana in the mess, and the one who was really in the boat drilling Ghana into the mess was Dr. Bawumia, his vice president, and he is the economic management team boss. The NPP have responded to that as well, and they said that, well, it is the decision of the president. And then they go back and remind Ghanaians that when John Mahama was vice president, he said the same thing, that he's only vice president when he becomes president. So we can give John Mahama the benefit of the doubt. He said that he's vice president, so we saw what he did. Then he said when he becomes president, he will do more. We saw what he did when he became president as well. Is that more? Is that good? If you think that's not good, look at Dr. Bawumia's vice presidency and then give him the ticket. It is for this reason that we are not surprised at all that the survey is coming out to show that Dr. Bawumia is the preferred candidate. We are not surprised at all that Dr. Bawumia is the preferred candidate. But because of economic difficulties, if I go and do a survey today and I ask people, between NDC or MPP, they should go away. We are tired. Look at the price of KNK. Look at the price of this. MPP people should go away. Between Dr. Bawumia and John Mahama, who do you want? You might say, I think Dr. Bawumia is not bad. That's what the survey has published. That's what is published. That's the end of the story. So those who are challenging it, they have to understand a bit more of the political analysis and see that this is very, very plausible. It's completely and absolutely plausible if you look at the way Ghana's democracy is structured. You can have a situation where people prefer Dr. Bawumia, but they think that they don't want MPP anymore, but they prefer Dr. Bawumia. As I said, when they go on the ballot on voting day, there will be MPP's photograph, MPP's logo, Dr. Bawumia's photograph, and the space to vote. NDC, John Dramani Mahama, and the space to vote, and the same will be replicated in 275 parliamentary seats. So this is the survey, and then as we go along this year in looking at the election, we will bring it in and out, and I'm sure there'll be more surveys that will give us the detail of why this is about. So there's 23% undecided, MPP and NDC, both of you have to